And I want to talk about what's going on with the arrest of all these people who are supporting the Bundys at the standoff. I was there covering it, and I've got to tell you, I'm very deeply disturbed by these criminal complaints that I saw. I haven't seen the indictment, but I'm assuming the indictment is the same as the criminal complaints. It does not match at all with what I saw there. I think this is an incredible case of government overreach, and now they're expanding this. They arrested another 12 people, and we're going to cover that in just a moment. Before we do, real quickly, I want to let you know that we've got a sale on Silver Bullet, 50% off at InfoWarsLife.com. Again, that's Silver Bullet, our colloidal silver, 30 parts per million, a very high concentration of silver. It is something that's not going to go bad for you. You need this as part of your preparation supplies. Right now, you can get it at 50% off. That's a huge saving at InfoWarsLife.com. Now, quickly, I want to go over what's going on. This is an article on Infowars.com by Kurt Nimmo. Government considers Bundy supporters to be domestic terrorists. And he points out that two more of Cliven Bundy's sons, David and Mel, were arrested by federal agents yesterday. They already had two sons that were arrested up in Oregon. That was Ammon and Ryan. You know, quite frankly, when I was there, I never saw David or Melvin. Ammon was a spokesperson. He was talking to the press. Ryan was there as well. David had been arrested before we got there. He had been transported, which is a very long distance, over an hour, down to Las Vegas, because that entire area is Clark County, from Las Vegas all the way up to Bunkerville. He'd been transported down there, arrested for taking pictures of these agents. You know, you're not allowed to take pictures of your masters. Don't look them in the eye, because that's a threat, okay? You look at them in the eye, you take a picture of them, that's perceived to be a threat. And, of course, that's what we're seeing in these indictments. All kinds of imagined threats, conspiracy charges to do this, conspiracy charges to do that. They didn't say they hurt anybody, okay? The people who did hurt people, the people who should be arrested, are these BLM agents. Nevertheless, they transported him all the way to Las Vegas. Then they just turned him out on the street. They didn't charge him with anything, but now they have arrested him. They're probably, if they get through with these and get these charges to stick in federal court, they will put them in jail for decades. They have arrested 12 people in 6 states. And this statement from the U.S. Attorney Daniel Bogdan said in a statement, this investigation began the day after the assault against federal law enforcement officers and continues to this day, he said. We will continue to work to identify the assaults and their role in the assault and the aftermath in order to ensure that justice is served. So this is something that they have ongoing. One of the people arrested, they're making a big deal out of this because he was a political activist up in New Hampshire. His name is Delimus. He was one of the 4 co-chairs of an auxiliary group that was supporting Donald Trump, Veterans for Trump in New Hampshire. It's not a formal part of the Trump campaign, but you have corporate media, as Kurt Nimmo points out, is making a big deal out of that connection. Now, his wife is also a New Hampshire state representative. As he came out of the court as part of this indictment, supporters were there in New Hampshire. They were, and this is reported by the New Hampshire Union leader, the crowd of supporters that were there for him were singing God Bless America as he was led out of the courtroom yesterday. Supporters held hands, joined in prayer just outside the door to courtroom 4 before declaring, tyranny has come to New Hampshire. This is not my America. I couldn't say it better myself. I am absolutely outraged that people like Michael Hayden would say that you should disobey orders by a president to torture people when he presided over an institution that was the institution doing the torture, calling it enhanced interrogation. That kind of parsing of the language, those kinds of lies, they are masters at that. And, of course, people like Michael Hayden, who work with the NSA, who work with the CIA, are masters of deception. That's what this dark government is about. It's about deception. And to say that these people have a right to disobey immoral, unconstitutional laws like torture, and to say that we as citizens don't have the right to disobey unlawful, immoral, unconstitutional orders from our government? Let me tell you about the man who was in charge of this standoff, Dan Love. Here's something from the Salt Lake Tribune. This was back in October of 2014. Public enemy number 1 for rural Utah sheriffs just happens to be a fellow peace officer. You hear that? Rural sheriffs versus a federal law enforcement agent. Who is that? Dan Love, the BLM's special agent in charge. Elected law enforcement officers, they say in the Salt Lake Tribune, from Nephi to Blanding, call him an arrogant, dishonest bully who has little regard for local authority and dodges accountability, derailing a collaborative approach to police work on the state's federal lands. They want to have nothing to do with the local law enforcement. He repudiates and gets in the faces of the people who are elected law enforcement and elected county commissioners, their local elected officials. Love reportedly just laughed when Garfield County Sheriff James Denny Perkins relayed ranchers' complaints about federal officers removing plastic feed tubes from the range and threatening the ranchers with litter citations. He drew early controversy during the undercover probe of artifacts, trafficking, and blanding in 2009. In that particular probe, you had a Dr. Red, who was a local, this is a small town, very remote rural area, as Senator Orrin Hatch said to the Department of Justice, Eric Holder. So I can't really get those two in my mind. There's such cognitive dissonance to talk about Department of Justice and Eric Holder. But Senator Orrin Hatch from Utah said to him, he said, "We have such a hard time getting doctors to serve these remote, low-population rural areas." This guy was deeply beloved by his community. They came after him. Dan Love came after him. There was a bead that was half the size of a dime. They valued it at $2,000 so they could get a felony charge for him. They burst onto his land with over 100 agents, took him, manhandled him, put him in his garage, tied him up, interrogated him for over 4 hours, told him his life was over, his medical career was over, and he subsequently committed suicide, along with the informant who talked about this and 2 other people. This is the kind of in-your-face iron fist that this special agent from the BLM, Dan Love, is ruling with. Now, I say top state officials, even in Utah, want Love to go. "This is untenable," said Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox. "There comes a time when personalities get in the way of productivity, and for his part, they say, Dan Love is not talking." Now we have another sheriff, Rick Eldridge of Perkins and San Juan County, said rangers pull over citizens without probable cause, even in areas where they have no jurisdiction. They bully ranch hands. They berate tourists for parking vehicles off of dirt roads and illegally close roads. Federal officers refuse to help with searches and rescues, and when they do, they get in the way. Now, this is what we've seen also in Oregon. Of course, Dan Love is not up in Oregon. He is over Utah and Nevada, but we have seen this in Oregon as well. That's why we had the sheriff up there in Grant County, Palmer, who was trying to help the people in his area. Now they're coming after that sheriff. They're trying to get his law enforcement credentials removed. That's what happens when sheriffs stand up to this kind of tyranny from the federal government. We got a Paiute County sheriff that was reported a couple of days ago talking about the Forest Service personnel. And he says, if I have to, I'm going to deputize every man, woman, and child in this county to stop these people. What do we do when they come against our elected officials? There was a ride of ATVs in a park area that was shut down by Dan Love. They called it the Recapture Ride because it was in, I think, Recapture Canyon. This is an area who had ATVs. And this has been promoted, been done for many, many years, a trail where they allow them to ride the ATVs through these vast number of acres that the government claims that they own. And it's being ruled by this guy, Dan Love, as if he was a sheriff of Nottingham. And as they were riding these, they did a protest. And this was really more than anything about jurisdictional conflicts. This is led by some county commissioners, but they had hundreds of people there. They arrested 5 people for this protest ride through the canyon. One of those 5 people was one of the outspoken daughters of the doctor. And of course, the doctor himself had been charged previously with some crimes he had won in court. This is a pattern of behavior we've seen over and over again with these people from the federal government. They come after somebody with a ridiculous charge, they lose in court, and then it becomes a multi-year vendetta for them until they get even. And that's what we're now seeing in the Bundy Ranch standoff. One of the people, one of the county commissioners who was part of that recapture ride, that protest ride, was that the BLM came after him, tried to get a 16-month sentence against him, jail term, 16 months, although the maximum sentence would have been 12 months. They tried for 16 months. Instead, they got 10 days, but they charged him a fine of $96,000, claiming that there was damage done to government land and that he was ultimately responsible for this. We've even had other special agents in charge from the Bureau of Land Management complain about this. Steve Martin, talking about what happened at the Bundy Ranch, said he was listening to details of a clandestine operation in Arizona. He is based in Arizona. He said he was listening to details in the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Artesia, New Mexico, And he said the plan was full of unduly optimistic bravado, and it lacked a key ingredient, cooperation with the county sheriff. And he said, I remember thinking, is this still the BLM? This is something that has been going on since 1978. At that time, they got their first 15 agents. They dressed them like park rangers. They gave them pistols. But then throughout the 80s, they began militarizing this organization. And we have to understand, as Ron Paul has said, if they get these weapons, if they militarize themselves, they're going to use it against you. And we've seen this now with the Department of Education doing SWAT teams against people that are behind in their student loans. It is absolutely amazing. You have to understand, to paraphrase Pastor Martin Niemöller, who said, first they came for this group, then they came for that one. First they came for the miners, and nobody did anything about that. Then they came after the loggers, and people said, well, I would rather let the forest burn than to let these people earn a living taking out deadwood. And that's truly what has happened now. Then they came for the ranchers. You got all these people in the city say, I hate people who are rednecks, who live out in the forest. They don't understand what's going on with this. Now they are coming for the sheriffs. Do you understand what's happening now? They're coming for the sheriffs. They're coming for the journalists. They're coming for the protesters. That's where we are with this tyranny. They're going to be coming for you in your little comfortable suburban home. They're going to round you up. And if they don't put you in a FEMA camp, they're going to put you in a city with their Agenda 21. Rob, what are your comments about this?
David, you're on fire as usual. It totally defies logic, but you see this anytime the federal government thinks they're above the law.
Oh, they are.
And you're really, when you get brought up on charges, you're almost better off either taking a deal or letting them win the first time, because they will keep bringing charges against you. I've heard story after story from people. I had one, this company used to make gentian violet, and they used to put it in chicken feed because it would keep the chickens from getting salmonella and worms. Wow. Okay, you didn't hear about salmonella and in the 70s. The 80s, the feds went against these guys and they beat them. The gentian violet producers beat them. They went to court 6 more times, so they finally beat them. Said, well, this causes cancer. You can't put this in chicken feed. Now we got salmonella in eggs. So, it's just the government doesn't care if it's wrong.
Yeah.
It only cares if it wins.
That's right.
It does not care at all.
We got the FDA, we got the DEA, we got all these tyrannies. We got the EPA putting fines on people, thinking that they own polluting all the property. Rivers. They're the ones who are making the massive pollution, blowing up that gold mine. Everybody told them it was going to happen. And even the retired mining engineer said they're doing this so they can create a super fund for themselves and expand their fiefdom. I think the real remedy for this, for the moment, what we can do as citizens, we have to educate each other on jury nullification. The Bundys are going to be coming up for trial. It made me sick to see this county commissioner convicted in this court. It made me sick to see the Hammonds convicted in court. People need to stop being sheep. You need to understand that when you're a juror, you need to look at this and say, is it warranted for the government to send the Bundys to jail for 40 years for what happened there? Weren't the actions of Dan Love and the BLM, weren't they far worse than anything that happened in that standoff? You have to look at this and say, all right, they got scared because weapons were brandished. When they cleared Dan Love of a wrongful death, they said, just having firearms and pointing them at people, that really didn't constitute an assault. But that's what they're saying about the Bundys. They have a double standard that is so incredible. We have to say, look, I understand what's going on, and even if this was a conspiracy to stop the government from moving this cattle, I don't agree with the penalties that you are applying with this, and I am not going to find these people guilty. And these charges are lies. They're charging Cliven Bundy with threatening them with firearms. He never carried firearms the days that we were there. He wasn't even at the standoff at the washout. It is absolutely incredible. This is a criminal government, and I mean, we could go on and on about this, but again, there's a judge that charged the BLM with criminal conspiracy. You don't hear anything about that. In another case in Nevada, Hagee case, he charged the BLM with that. Nothing about that in the mainstream press. Absolutely nothing. They get away with literally with murder.
Clean, pure drinking water. You can't survive without it. But where do you get it? Alexa Pure Pro is a brand new, groundbreaking, gravity-fed water filtration system that is like no other. The Alexa Pure Pro transforms water from virtually any fresh source into clean, healthy drinking water, pairing the unprecedented superfiltration power of an all-new gravity block core with a hybrid chromatic shell. It removes up to 99.999% of impurities, including bacteria, viruses, fluoride, disinfectants, volatile organic contaminants, and hormones. Filter capacity up to 5,000 gallons. Stainless steel construction. Easy assembly. Low maintenance. Replacement filters are simple to install. And now, as part of an exclusive limited time introductory offer, you can save $20 off the retail price and get free shipping. This is a limited time offer, so order your unit today and receive free shipping and $20 off. Go to InfoWarsStore.com or call 888-253-3139.